3-year-old girl, found something small and furry in her backyard. She named it Whiskers. Her parents thought it was a hamster. They were wrong. What she actually found was the last living member of a species that once ruled an entire star system, and when the hunters came looking for it, they brought weapons that could vaporize a city block. This isn't science fiction. This is the story of first contact gone horribly, terrifyingly wrong. It's about what happens when a child's innocent love for a small creature becomes the only thing standing between Earth and an alien civilization that doesn't take no for an answer. The girl's name was Emma Rodriguez. She lived in a quiet suburb outside Denver. On a Tuesday morning in March, she found Whiskers hiding under a rose bush. He was small, about the size of a tennis ball. He had soft gray fur and enormous black eyes. Emma's mom, Sophia, assumed it was an escaped pet hamster. She posted on neighborhood Facebook groups. No one claimed him. So Whiskers stayed. Emma fed him apple slices and sunflower seeds. He slept in a shoebox next to her bed. He made soft chirping sounds when she pet him. Everything seemed normal. But 3 weeks later, something happened that would change everything. Emma's dad, Victor, noticed Whiskers was glowing. Not all the time, just at night. A faint blue shimmer around his tiny body. Victor filmed it on his phone. He posted it to Reddit. Within 6 hours, that video had 8 million views. Within 12 hours, armed soldiers surrounded their house. Now here's where things get really interesting. The soldiers weren't American. They weren't Russian or Chinese either. They wore no flags on their uniforms. They spoke English with strange accents that linguists later couldn't place. They told Sophia and Victor that Whiskers wasn't a hamster. He was something far more valuable and far more dangerous. The lead officer identified herself as Commander Thalia. She was tall, over 6 feet. She had silver hair, cut military short. She explained that Whiskers belonged to a species called the Verim. The Verim came from a planet orbiting a red dwarf star 70 light-years from Earth. For thousands of years, the Verim were the most advanced civilization in their region of space, but they had one fatal weakness. They bred slowly, one offspring every 10 years, sometimes less. Their population never exceeded 2 billion across their entire empire. When a plague swept through their worlds 3 decades ago, it killed 99% of them in just 5 years. The survivors scattered. Most died searching for new homes. A few made it to Earth. Whiskers was one of them. According to Thalia, he arrived on Earth 6 months ago. His ship crashed in the Rocky Mountains. He survived by hiding, by staying small, by pretending to be something harmless. The glowing was a defense mechanism. It happened when he felt safe, when he trusted someone. Emma had earned that trust. Thalia told the Rodriguez family. They had 2 options: hand over Whiskers immediately, or face prosecution under laws they'd never heard of. Sophia asked what laws. Thalia said they were classified. She said Emma and her family were now witnesses to an active investigation. She said they needed to cooperate. Victor asked who Thalia worked for. She didn't answer. Emma refused to let them take Whiskers. She locked herself in her bedroom. She held Whiskers against her chest. She cried. Sophia and Victor stood between the soldiers and their daughter. Victor said they had rights. Thalia said rights didn't apply in matters of galactic security. Sophia called a lawyer. The call went straight to voicemail. That's when things escalated. A second group arrived. They weren't soldiers. They wore black body armor with symbols that looked like circuit boards melted into organic shapes. They moved wrong, too fast, too smooth. Their leader called himself Vex. He announced that Whiskers was property of the Kareth Syndicate. He said the Syndicate had spent 17 years hunting the last Verim. He said Earth's government had already been paid for their cooperation. Thalia and Vex argued. Sophia didn't understand most of it. They used words like jurisdiction and extraction rights and treaty compliance. But the message was clear. Two separate groups wanted Whiskers. Both were willing to use force. Emma was trapped in the middle. But if you think that's crazy, wait until you hear this. The Verim weren't just smart, they were impossible. Their brains processed information at speeds that made quantum computers look slow. A single Verim could solve mathematical problems in seconds that would take humanity's best supercomputers years. They invented faster-than-light travel when their civilization was only 300 years old. Humans have been around for 200,000 years. We still can't break the light barrier. Whiskers might have looked like a hamster, but inside that tiny skull was a mind capable of storing the entire contents of the Library of Congress, times 1,000. He remembered everything, every moment of his species' history, every scientific discovery, every cultural achievement. He was a living archive. The Karath Syndicate wanted him for exactly that reason. The Syndicate was a coalition of 7 alien species who dominated trade in this sector of the galaxy. They bought and sold technology. They controlled patents on inventions that could revolutionize entire worlds. When the Verim Plague hit, the Syndicate saw an opportunity. They hunted the survivors. They extracted their knowledge. They reverse-engineered Verim technology and sold it for trillions. Whiskers was the last one they hadn't caught. That made him priceless. Everything the Verim knew about physics, energy generation, medical science, and artificial intelligence was locked inside his brain. Whoever owned Whiskers owned the key to technologies that could change the balance of power across dozens of star systems. Thalia's group called themselves the Preservation Collective. They claimed to be different. They said they wanted to protect Whiskers, to give him sanctuary, to preserve Verim culture before it vanished forever. Sophia asked why she should believe that. Thalia showed her a hologram. It displayed a facility on a moon orbiting Jupiter. Inside were gardens, habitats, a place designed for refugees from extinct or dying species. It looked peaceful. But Victor noticed something. The hologram showed force fields around every habitat, cameras everywhere, armed guards. He asked if the refugees could leave. Thalia hesitated. She said it was complicated. She said protection required containment. Victor said that sounded like a prison. Thalia didn't deny it. Meanwhile, Vex made his own offer. He told Sophia and Victor that the Syndicate would pay them $50 million for Whiskers. He showed them a credit authorization on a device that floated in the air without any visible support. The money was real. He said they could verify it through any Earth bank. He said the Syndicate didn't care about Emma's feelings or Earth's laws. He said they would take Whiskers with or without cooperation. The money was a courtesy. Sophia looked at her daughter. Emma was still holding Whiskers. The little creature was glowing brighter now. He was scared. Sophia could tell. She'd worked as a veterinary nurse for 12 years. She knew animal body language. Whiskers was trembling. His breathing was fast and shallow. He understood what was happening. He knew both groups wanted to take him away from the only being in the universe who'd shown him kindness. That's when Sophia made a decision. She told Vex to leave her property. She told Thalia the same thing. She said Whiskers was staying with Emma until they figured out what was actually going on. Vex laughed. He said humans were amusing. He said they always thought they had more power than they actually did. He reached for his weapon. Victor stepped forward. He held a baseball bat he'd grabbed from the garage. It was aluminum. It would do nothing against alien body armor. He knew that. He swung anyway. This brings us to the most shocking discovery of all. Victor's bat never connected. 3 feet from Vex's helmet, the bat stopped. It hung in the air like it had hit an invisible wall. Victor pulled. The bat didn't move. Vex tilted his head. He said something in a language that sounded like music played backward. The bat crumpled. It folded in on itself like paper. Victor jumped back. That's when Whiskers did something no one expected. He squeaked. It was loud, much louder than any sound a hamster-sized creature should make. The sound hit a frequency that made everyone's ears ring. Windows cracked. The soldiers stumbled. Vex grabbed his helmet. Even Thalia looked shocked. The squeak was a defense mechanism, but it was more than that. It was a signal. Within seconds, every electronic device in the neighborhood shut down. Phones died. Cars stopped running. The power grid went dark for 3 blocks in every direction. Emma's tablet computer sparked and went black. Victor's phone melted in his pocket. He yelped and threw it on the ground. Whiskers had just released an electromagnetic pulse, a focused EMP that didn't hurt living tissue but fried anything with circuits. The Verim had engineered this ability into themselves thousands of years ago. They'd been a peaceful species. They didn't build weapons, but they'd learned how to defend themselves without violence. An EMP was the perfect deterrent. It disabled attackers without killing them. Vex's armor went dark. He couldn't move. The suit had locked up. He was trapped inside. His soldiers were in the same situation. They stood frozen like statues. Thalia's soldiers had different armor, older models, shielded against EMPs. They raised their weapons. Thalia ordered them to stand down. She stared at Whiskers with something that looked like awe. She said the Verim weren't supposed to be able to do that anymore. She said the plague had damaged their genetic code. The survivors lost most of their abilities. They could still think, still remember, but they couldn't defend themselves. That's why the Syndicate had been able to hunt them so easily. That's why the Preservation Collective thought they needed protection. The Verim had become helpless. Except Whiskers wasn't helpless. He'd just proven that. Sophia asked what that meant. Thalia said it meant Whiskers was different. Special. Possibly the only Verim left who still had the full genetic package. His parents must have been from a bloodline that resisted the plague better than others. That made him more than just the last Verim. It made him the only Verim who could still fight back. The Syndicate's value estimate just multiplied. A helpless Verim was worth billions for their knowledge. A Verim who could still use defensive abilities? Worth trillions. Every military in the galaxy would pay anything to study that, to reverse engineer it, to weaponize it. Thalia made a decision. She ordered her soldiers to form a perimeter around the house. She told Sophia and Victor that things had just become much more complicated. She said the Syndicate would send reinforcements, bigger ships, more soldiers, weapons that didn't rely on electronics. She said Earth's atmosphere wouldn't stop them. She said local law enforcement wouldn't help. She said the Rodriguez family was now in the middle of a conflict that could spread across the solar system. Victor asked why Earth's military wasn't involved. Thalia said they were, just not visibly. She said governments on Earth had known about alien contact for 7 years. They'd kept it quiet. They'd signed treaties. They'd agreed to let groups like the Collective and the Syndicate operate on Earth in exchange for technology and protection from larger threats. She said the Rodriguez family had accidentally stumbled into a system that had been hidden from the public since 2018. Sophia felt sick. She asked if anyone was actually on their side. Thalia said she was. Sort of. She said the Collective's mission was preservation, not exploitation, but she admitted the line between the two got blurry sometimes. She said her orders were to secure Whiskers by any means necessary. But she'd always hated that phrase. She'd always wondered what necessary really meant. Emma was still holding Whiskers. He'd stopped glowing. He looked exhausted. Emma asked if Whiskers could talk. Thalia said the Verim could communicate telepathically with each other, but not with humans. At least, not usually. So what does all this mean for us today? Thalia was wrong. Whiskers could communicate. He'd been doing it all along, just not in a way anyone recognized. Emma said Whiskers showed her pictures, in her dreams. She thought they were just her imagination. But now she described them. She talked about cities made of light, ships that moved through stars like fish through water, gardens with plants that sang, creatures of every shape and size living together peacefully. She said Whiskers showed her his home, his family, his life before the plague. Thalia listened carefully. She asked Emma specific questions. What color were the cities? What shape were the ships? How many moons did Whiskers' planet have? Emma answered every question correctly. Details that weren't public knowledge. Details that only someone who'd actually been to Verum worlds would know. Whiskers hadn't just been hiding. He'd been choosing, testing, waiting for someone who would see him as more than a resource, more than a weapon, more than a commodity. Emma was 3 years old. She didn't want to extract his knowledge or study his genetics. She wanted to share apple slices and make him comfortable. That's why he'd bonded with her. That's why he'd started communicating. The implications hit everyone at once. If Whiskers could form telepathic bonds with humans, everything changed. The Verum weren't just valuable for what they knew. They could share that knowledge directly. Mind to mind, no translation errors, no misunderstandings. One Verum could teach thousands of humans advanced physics, engineering, medicine, and more. Not through lectures or textbooks, through direct transfer of understanding. The Syndicate had been hunting living databases. What they'd actually been destroying was the most powerful teaching tool in the known galaxy. And they either didn't know or didn't care, because teaching couldn't be owned. Knowledge that spread freely had no market value to them. Thalia realized something else. If Whiskers could bond with Emma, he could bond with others. The collective's entire approach was wrong. They didn't need to lock the Verum away in protective custody. They needed to let them integrate, let them choose partners, let them share their knowledge on their own terms. The Verum weren't endangered animals that needed cages. They were people who needed communities. But there was a problem, a big one. Vex's armor was rebooting. Sophia could see lights flickering inside his helmet. The EMP's effects weren't permanent. In less than 5 minutes, he and his soldiers would be mobile again, and they'd be angry. Victor asked what they should do. Thalia said she could hold them off for maybe 20 minutes. Then Syndicate reinforcements would arrive. She showed them a tactical display on her forearm. Dots were moving toward Earth from the asteroid belt. Ships, big ones. They'd be in orbital position within the hour. They'd have weapons that could strike anywhere on the planet. Thalia's small team couldn't fight that. Sophia asked if they should run. Thalia said there was nowhere on Earth the Syndicate couldn't track Whiskers. His biology had a unique signature. Their scanners could detect him from orbit. Unless they found a way to hide that signature, running would just delay the inevitable. Emma had an idea. She said Whiskers showed her a picture of a place. A building, somewhere cold, somewhere underground. She said Whiskers wanted to go there. She couldn't explain why. She just knew it was important. Thalia asked where. Emma said she didn't know the name. But she could draw it. She drew a mountain, then a symbol that looked like 2 circles connected by a line. Thalia's expression changed. She recognized it. She said that symbol belonged to an old research station, one that had been abandoned decades ago. It was in Antarctica, built by the Verum during an early survey mission to Earth, back when they thought they might colonize here, before they realized humans were on the verge of industrial civilization. The station was shielded, not just physically. It had technology that could hide anything inside from sensors. If they could get Whiskers there, the Syndicate would lose their tracking ability. They'd have to search manually. That would take years. But Antarctica was 6,000 miles away. They had less than an hour, and they were surrounded by hostile forces. The odds weren't good. Before we wrap up, there's one final thing you need to know. Victor asked the obvious question. How are they supposed to get from Denver to Antarctica in under an hour? Commercial flights took at least 15 hours with connections. Even military jets would take too long. Thalia said there was one option. The collective had a ship in orbit, a fast one. It could make the trip in 30 minutes, but calling it down meant exposing their position to the syndicate even faster. Sophia said they didn't have a choice. They had to try. Emma nodded. She held Whiskers close. The little creature chirped softly. Sophia wondered what he was thinking. Did he understand they were risking everything for him? Did he know how much Emma loved him? Thalia made the call. Her ship started its descent. Meanwhile, Vex's armor fully rebooted. He stood up. His voice came through his helmet speakers. It sounded like grinding metal. He said the Rodriguez family had made a terrible mistake. He said the syndicate didn't tolerate interference. He said they would take Whiskers, and they would make sure everyone involved regretted standing in their way. His soldiers activated their weapons. They aimed at Thalia's team. Thalia's soldiers aimed back. For a moment, no one moved. Then Emma did something extraordinary. She stepped between the two groups. A 3-year-old girl standing between armed soldiers from different alien factions. She held Whiskers up like an offering. She said Whiskers wasn't a thing. He was a person. She said taking him would be kidnapping. She said her teacher told her kidnapping was wrong. She said if these soldiers were good people, they wouldn't do wrong things, even if their bosses told them to. It was simple, childishly simple. But sometimes simple truth hits harder than complex arguments. One of Vex's soldiers lowered his weapon, then another. Vex shouted orders. They didn't respond. He repeated the orders. Still nothing. Finally, one soldier spoke. He said he joined the syndicate to explore the galaxy, not to steal children's pets, not to threaten families. Vex called him a traitor. The soldier removed his helmet. His face was humanoid, but not human. Blue skin, 3 eyes, delicate features. He said he was from a species that had been enslaved 2 centuries ago. The syndicate had freed them, given them jobs, purpose. But this didn't feel like freedom. This felt like they'd just changed masters. Other soldiers started removing their helmets. Different species, different faces, but the same expression, doubt, shame. Vex realized he was losing control. He raised his weapon toward Emma. Thalia shot him, not with a bullet, with something that looked like concentrated lightning. Vex collapsed. His armor sparked. He didn't get up. The syndicate soldiers didn't attack. They just stood there. Thalia told them they could leave, or they could help. She said the collective had jobs for anyone who wanted to actually preserve life instead of exploiting it. She said the pay was worse, but the nightmares were fewer. 3 soldiers stayed. The rest left. The ship arrived. It materialized above the house like it had always been there. No sound, no light show, just suddenly present. It was beautiful. Organic curves mixed with geometric precision. Colors that shifted depending on viewing angle. Emma gasped. She said it looked like a dream. They boarded quickly. Sophia, Victor, Emma, Whiskers, Thalia, and the 3 syndicate defectors. The ship lifted. G-forces should have crushed them, but they felt nothing. The ship compensated perfectly. Within seconds, they were in the upper atmosphere. Within minutes, they were over the ocean. That's when the syndicate reinforcements arrived. Massive vessels that dwarfed Thalia's ship. They demanded surrender. Thalia ignored them. She pushed the engines harder. The ship screamed across the sky at speeds that should have been impossible. Sophia looked out the window. She saw Antarctica approaching. White, endless, beautiful and deadly. The syndicate ships fired. Energy weapons that tore through clouds like they were paper. Thalia's ship dodged. Barely. One shot grazed the hull. Alarms blared. They were hit. Not badly, but enough. They wouldn't survive another one. If this opened your eyes, they crashed. Not hard, but not soft either. The ship skidded across Antarctic ice for half a mile before stopping. Everyone was bruised but alive. The ship's systems were dying. Thalia said they had maybe 5 minutes before total shutdown. They needed to reach the research station. It was 3 miles away, in negative 40-degree temperatures, with syndicate ships closing in. Victor carried Emma. Sophia carried Whiskers. Thalia and her team provided cover. They ran across the ice. It was the longest 3 miles of their lives. Wind cut through their clothes like knives. Sophia's lungs burned. Victor's legs screamed. Emma started crying, not from fear, from cold. Then they saw it, the research station, buried in ice. Just an entrance visible. A door with that same symbol. 2 circles connected by a line. Thalia pressed her hand against it. Nothing happened. She tried different combinations. Still nothing. The door was locked, and they didn't have the key. Whiskers squeaked. Emma put him down. He walked to the door, placed one tiny paw against the symbol. The door glowed. Blue light spread across the ice. The door opened. Not mechanically. It dissolved. Like it had never been solid at all. Inside was warmth, light, technology that hummed with quiet power. The station wasn't abandoned. It had been waiting for this moment, for Whiskers. Because this was never just a research station. It was a refuge. The Verim had built it centuries ago. They'd planned for disaster. They'd hidden safe houses across a dozen worlds. Places where survivors could regroup, heal, start over. Whiskers walked inside like he was coming home. Emma followed. The rest came after. The door sealed behind them. Outside, syndicate ships landed. Soldiers surrounded the entrance. They tried to force it open. They failed. The station's shields were active now. Nothing was getting through. Not syndicate weapons. Not collective technology. Nothing. Thalia explained what happened next. The station had sent a signal, a distress call, not to the collective, not to the syndicate, to someone else. Someone older, more powerful. Someone who'd been watching this sector of space for a very long time. She said humanity was about to learn they weren't dealing with just 2 alien factions. They were about to meet the civilization that made the rules everyone else followed. She called them the Arbiter Council. They didn't take sides in small conflicts, but they enforced one absolute law. No species could be hunted to extinction. The Verim were under their protection. The Syndicate had been breaking that law for years. The Council was coming, and they were bringing consequences. 3 days later, ships arrived, vessels so large they blocked out the sun. The Council sent representatives to Earth's governments. They explained the situation. They offered a choice. Earth could join the galactic community officially, with full knowledge, full participation, or Earth could remain isolated. The Council would erase all evidence of alien contact. Humanity would forget. Life would continue as before. The governments chose transparency. Mostly. They revealed some truth, enough to prepare people, not enough to cause panic. Emma Rodriguez became famous, the girl who saved the last Verim. Sophia and Victor tried to give her a normal life. It didn't work. Normal was gone forever. Whiskers stayed in the Antarctic station, but Emma visited, once a month. She was learning. Things no human had ever known. Whiskers was teaching her, not just science, but philosophy, ethics, the wisdom of a species that had seen civilizations rise and fall for millennia. She was 3 years old. She had a long life ahead of her, and she would spend it changing everything humanity thought it knew about the universe. Let's recap what really happened here. A toddler found the last survivor of an alien species that was being hunted to extinction. That survivor turned out to be far more valuable than anyone realized, not just as a database of knowledge, but as a living teacher who could share understanding directly with humans. Two alien factions fought over him on Earth's soil, revealing that humanity had been in contact with extraterrestrial civilizations for years without public knowledge. And when things looked hopeless, that tiny creature led his human family to a hidden refuge that triggered intervention from the most powerful force in the galaxy, a council that enforces laws across hundreds of worlds. This story shows us something profound about power and value. The Syndicate saw Whiskers as property. The Collective saw him as an endangered specimen. Emma saw him as a friend. And friendship, that simple, genuine connection, turned out to be more powerful than weapons or money or political leverage. It was Emma's innocence that made soldiers question their orders, her love that activated ancient Verum technology, her trust that opened doors no one else could unlock. Here's what this means for humanity going forward. We're not alone. We've never been alone. And the galaxy operates on rules we're just beginning to understand. Some of those rules protect the weak. Some reward the ruthless. We get to choose which ones we follow. We get to decide if we'll be like the Syndicate, exploiting others for profit, or like Emma, offering kindness without expecting anything in return. The Antarctic station is still there, still active, still teaching Emma things that will reshape human science for generations. The Council established an embassy on Earth's moon. Contact is official now. Slow, careful, but real. And every day, humans are learning we're part of something much larger than we imagined. Something wonderful and terrifying in equal measure. If this story opened your eyes to just how wild the universe really is, make sure you're subscribed to this channel. We're diving deep into the hidden history of human-alien contact every single week. Hit that like button if you want more. Stories about ordinary people caught in extraordinary situations. And drop a comment telling me this. If you found a creature like Whiskers in your backyard tomorrow, what would you do? Would you protect it like Emma did? Or would you call the authorities and let them handle it? Be honest. There's no wrong answer. But your answer might tell you something important about who you are. Before you go, you need to watch our next video. It's about what happened when the Council tried to enforce their laws on a human colony that refused to comply. Things got complicated fast. People died, and the aftermath changed the entire political structure of 3-star systems. That video drops in 2 days. Set your notifications so you don't miss it. And if you really want to go deeper, we've got a free newsletter that breaks down the science behind real first contact scenarios. Not the Hollywood version, the actual protocols governments and scientists have prepared. The mathematics of interstellar communication. The biological challenges of meeting species that evolved under completely different conditions. It's fascinating stuff. Link in the description. No spam. Just deep dives into the questions that keep cosmologists awake at night. The universe is bigger than we thought. Stranger than we imagined, and we're all living through the opening chapter of humanity's real galactic story. The question is, are you paying attention? Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.